Mike from Eldorado Guitars, and today I thought I would do a fun video about evaluating my bass. So this is a 1972 Marshall bass model. It's not a super bass. Super bass is 100 watts. This is a bass 50 watts. A lot of people get confused because it's in the big head shell. But back in the day, Marshall used big and small head shells on a variety of amps. So it was actually pretty common to see 50 watt amps in the bigger head shell. I've been thinking about doing some stuff to this amp. I had Jeremy from Ground Zero Amp Works go through it when he worked on my Super Lead. And we didn't really do much to this. We just put a bright cap on it, made sure everything was working correctly. But there were no major changes to this amp. Other than the bright cap, we pretty much kind of left it alone. I think maybe we altered the negative feedback with a slightly different value or something, but like that was it. Other than that, we pretty much left it alone. And I think it sounds pretty good. I've got it here going through a mid-70s Marshall 4x12 with Celestion Blackback speakers in it. So these are, I think, the 30 watt ones, right? Or no, actually no, I think they're G12Ms, but they're the Blackback ones. They've got a slightly different sound than a greenback. It's close, but these are a little more aggressive than the regular greenbacks. And what I wanted to do in this video was kind of show you why I want to make some changes to this amp. I want to try and find like an overdrive that works really well with this amp, and I'm going to roll the tubes around a little bit. Right now I installed some Chinese tubes in an effort to make the amp brighter and have a little more gain, but I think it's become a bit harsh, and I think I'm going to put the NOS tubes back in it and see what those do. And I thought I would just kind of document that with you guys, and I'll timestamp this so you can cut around. So on the bass models, you typically actually don't want to jump the amp. I have a jumper here, and you can jump it, and I'll show you what it sounds like. But usually, unlike a super lead, you pretty much want to go right into the bright channel of a bass. And the reason being, this amp has a little bit more bass, a little bit warmer sound, and it doesn't really need the jump. So you can hear it sounds really good, and this is currently without the bright cap. This is just the OG amp. This is the way the amp sounds stock, right? Totally stock sound. I've got the gain right now, the volume here straight up at noon. I've got the bass down a little and the presence, middle, and treble all up around 6 or 7, 8. And right, this is what it sounds like. It sounds good. But you can hear it's a little muffly, right? It's a little fuzzy. And that's why we put the bright cap on it. So I'll turn the bright cap on now. It's a push in for the bright cap. So I'll keep the volume and everything the same, and I'll just push it in. And you'll hear now what it sounds like with the bright cap. This is not, I don't think we put a bright cap on it that's as big as the Super Lead, so it's a smaller bright cap. But here's what it sounds like now. So yeah, you can hear the bright cap really brings the amp to life, right? Now the thing about bright caps is the more you turn the amp up, the less the bright cap matters. So the more you turn this gain up, or this volume up of the channel, the bright cap is going to have less and less of an impact. So let me show you what I mean. If I set this really low to like 2, the amp is going to be really bright. Sounds a lot more like a lead, right? And then as I turn it up, you're going to hear the bright cap kind of cut out and out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a G chord because it's got a lot of treble up here at the top. And then you'll hear the bright cap kind of matter less and less as I turn it up. you turn it up to 8 or 10, and there's absolutely no difference at full volume. I'll pop it in and out so you can hear. Right, so there's literally no difference at 10. But if I take it back to where we had it at 5, again, you'll hear the difference immediately. I personally like it both ways, just for different things. For lower gain applications, or if you want to use pedals and stuff, I think it's actually better to have no bright cap. But if you're not using pedals, or if you have the right pedal or the right guitar or something, the bright cap really adds a lot more gain and really kind of like wakes the amp up. Now, one thing I don't like, you're probably like, yo Mike, what's the problem? Sounds great both ways, like what's the issue? Well, if you want to boost this amp, things start to get a little weird. So let me show you what I mean, right? So if I'm going to pull the bright cap out, so right now we're back at the stock sound, right? If I add a boost in front of this, it sounds great. So right now this is the Westwood, the Earthquaker device's Westwood. So if I add a boost to this, it's going to sound really great. Here we go. Sounds really good. Now, but with the bright cap, it sounds really weird. So let me show you what I mean. I'll put the bright cap back in. Now here's our sound. I'll add the boost. Kind of harsh, right? It's like, it's very, very, very toppy. I like the gain level, but it's very, very toppy. So one thing I could do, right, is I can turn down the treble on the pedal. So I could actually lower the treble on the pedal, and here's what that sounds like. Sounds a lot like that old Rage Against the Machine song. So it sounds pretty good, but you can hear there's just like some frequencies in it that are kind of not pleasant, right? So what I'm hoping is, I'm hoping that if I change the tubes back from the current Chinese 12AX7Bs that are in there back to the new old stock ECC83s, and I'll show you them in a minute. I'm hoping that that will reduce some of those frequencies while still keeping the balance of the amp so that I can use both ways, right? So that's kind of really what I'm hoping. I think those really harsh frequencies are from the Chinese tubes, and let me explain. Now you're probably like, yeah, it's those Chinese tubes. No, Chinese tubes are great, right? A lot of your favorite amps use Chinese tubes, right? Dave Friedman's amps use Chinese tubes. You know, Mesa Boogie uses Chinese tubes. I guarantee you've played amps with Chinese tubes and like them, right? They're generally pretty bright and they're pretty gainy, right? Now the good news is they usually have very low noise. So the great thing that I like about those Chinese 12AX7Bs is that they have really low noise, really high gain, and they're a little brighter. So in a darker amp like a Friedman or a Diesel or a Mesa, those tubes really work because they give the amp extra gain and they give it a little bit more cut on the top end, a little more stiffness on the top end. But I think on an old Plexi like this, they don't really work that well because these amps are already really bright, especially when you've got the bright cap, right? And I suspect that that's why the amp sounds really good without the bright cap and with the boost, and why it sounds good with just the bright cap, but when you start adding the boost on it, it gets harsh, right? So I'm hoping that if I change that around and change those tubes back, we will get a better, you know, a better overall result is what I'm hoping. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna cut so you guys can check it out, and I'll show you the tubes, and I'll flip this bad boy around, and we'll change the tubes and see what happens when I get back. Okay? See you in a minute. Okay guys, hey, it's Mike again. I'll show you. This is my bag of tubes. So I've got a bunch of different tubes in here. Here's some used 12AX7s, premium 12AX7s. We're not gonna worry about, these are like other Chinese tubes that have come in and out of things. Here we go, NOS 12AX7s from old Marshalls. So these are, don't worry about the boxes. I will get to that in a second. I've got a couple of other various tubes in here. It's usually good to keep like extras around, right? Like these are tubes from my Jubilee, right, that I took out at one point. And then of course I've got just like a bazillion random, you know, 7025s, 5751s. I've got like mid-gain tubes, you know, a bunch of different stuff. But what I want to show you guys is actually this, which is the NOS 12AX7s from old Marshalls. So let's take a look. These are the tubes that came in my 70 Super Lead and in that 50-watt bass. And like you said, you may be wondering why I took them out. And the reason was because I wanted to experiment with other tubes, and I wanted to you know, keep these for later. So I've got here a long plate. I think this is, no, actually this isn't a long plate, but this is a, if you can see that, this is a Brimar ECC83. So this is an old tube made in England, right? So this is a really good old preamp tube. So we might use that. I'll leave that out. This one is, let's see what this bad boy is. This guy is, these boxes are like indestructible. I don't know what they've done with these things. Let's take a look here. All right, so this is an Era, so you've probably seen these on Reverb or something. These are like OG Marshall tubes from way back in the day, late 60s, early 70s. So this is another really good tube that we can use. Let's see what else I've got in here. I've got, this is another ECC83. This one isn't marked. It just says ECC83 on the side. And it just looks like kind of a regular one. All these have the old school getters, the little pointy getters, right? Like these things, the little pointy guys here. So this could be a good one too. Let's see what else we have here. Let's take a look. I've got another Brimar. So this is another made in England, right? So another one there. I think these were the two that originally came in the base. I think the third one is still in there. I think I left the phase inverter tube. So this is another made in England. Oh, this is a Brimar also. So I have three of these. Three Brimar ECC83. So maybe these were the OG base tubes. I'm gonna have to look now. I thought I had left the last one in there. And then finally, I've got one more here. I think this is like a Vox or something. What is this? Yeah, this is a Vox tube, an ECC81 Vox tube. So we can test some of these out and see how they go. I just wanted to show you guys, right, that these are the OGs. Like these are really old tubes from the 60s, 70s, right? Really old tubes. So let's go back over to the lead and or to the bass, and we'll swap them out. Okay guys, so I have gone ahead and I have pulled off the back of the bass. You'll see here, this is the small, right, amp. It doesn't take up the whole thing like a lead, right? And you can see our three preamp tubes here, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now first of all, never open an amp if you don't know what you're doing. Never, ever, ever, ever. And never touch anything if you don't know what you're doing. Never, ever, ever, ever. And the reason I say that is because you can electrocute yourself. I'm not joking. You can literally kill yourself. So please only do this if you know what you're doing. Also, if you open your amp up right after you turn it off like this, these tubes are gonna be hot AF. Don't touch them, you'll burn yourself, okay? So like, I can still feel the heat coming off of these. I've let it cool for about, like 10 minutes, but still, like they're warm, right? Especially on old amps like this. So don't take these off if you don't know what you're doing, all right? Okay, so let's go ahead. So we've got our three preamp tubes here. Let's see what I've got in here right now. So let's take off the shields and we can see what I've got here. So 1, 2, and 3. No, I did change them all. Yeah, I did. Okay. So I did change them. So I thought I had the OG one in here, but this is not actually. So these are both Chinese 12AX7s. So let's take a look here. These are Chinese 12AX7Bs, right, which you can see right there. I think these are from NOS Tubes. You can always recognize the Chinese 12AX7Bs because they have the square getter on the top. See how it's a square? There's the little pointy bit, but it's square, right? Now, as opposed to, this is the one I had put in the phase inverter apparently, which is a 7025. And you'll see that on this one, it's spiky, right? See how it's spiky? The Chinese ones are not spiky, see? They're more square on the top, see? Okay? So that's usually how you can tell if it's a Chinese 12AX7A or B. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're gonna replace all these with the NOS tubes because again, what these are doing is they're giving me more gain and a little bit more clarity, but at the cost of brightness. And in an old Marshall like this that's already pretty bright, they just don't really work that well. I thought they would work because this is a bass model. And so I thought, oh, it's a bass model. I'm playing guitar through it. I should put modern tubes to bring out the brightness. But I just don't think that they're, like I said, they're a little harsh, right? They're a little harsh. So there's those. Now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna use the 3 OG tubes that I had. So if you recall, I've got 3 OG 12AX7s here that we selected. This is the Vox one, or sorry, the Brymar ones. These are the ones that came in here because they're the only ones that matched. So I'm just gonna pop them right back in. That's it, Brymar ECC83. All you do is you put it in, you tilt it around until you feel it go down in the socket, and then you just push it down. That's it, that's all you gotta do, right? Very easy. Very, very, very easy. Again, if you don't know what you're doing, don't do this, right? But I think it's pretty easy. Changing preamp tubes is something pretty much every guitar player should know how to do. I mean, they're really not difficult. It's really not difficult to change. Let's see if I can get this guy to go down. Sometimes these old tube sockets are a little janky. You need to stand up and actually see where the pins sit. So there we go. And they're not always aligned the same. Like in modern amps, usually the labels, you can just line up the labels, but on these old amps, you can't do that. So let's go ahead and take a look here. All right, and this is the last one. This is an ECC83. So these are the 3 OG ECC83s that came in the amp from literally 1972. These are probably the OG preamp tubes, right? Most likely. So let's go ahead. This amp was made, just for your awareness, this was made 11/28/1972. So Thanksgiving of 1972. So near the end of the fully hand-wired Marshalls. By this point, they were already fabricating their PCBs. And by, you know, the mid-70s, they would move over to all PCB. Okay? So that's that. Now, one thing I am going to tell you is I'm not going to put the back on this one yet. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because we might want to roll around more tubes. So I'm going to leave the back off. You're totally safe to leave the back off. Just don't reach your hand in there or anything, right? You're totally safe to do so. And let's see what it sounds like now. And then we'll try like a couple of different boosts and other things. And let's kind of just, you know, experiment and see what happens. So yeah, let's check it out. Okay guys, we're back. I've gone ahead and plugged everything back in, turned everything back around. No settings changes of any kind, no changes on the guitar, no changes on the amp, right? Literally no changes. So let's go ahead and power it on. I have the bright cap. Let's start with the bright cap off. So I'm gonna pull it out so that it's off, all right? Turn our power station on because of course we've got to attenuate this bad boy. It'll be louder than hell. And let's go ahead and see what we get. Impression immediately is there's a lot more bass. There is a lot more bass, which is to be expected because those Chinese 12AX7s, like I said, kind of have an EQ curve sort of like this, right? With bass, mids, treble, right? Whereas these NOS ECC83s are going to have more like a bass, like maybe like a bass, middle, treble. I don't know. It's like if they're more even, right? Like they're a little bit more even. So let's hear it again. check the neck pickup, and I'm going to roll the volume back a little. I think it sounds pretty good. I kind of got lost there jamming out. I think it sounds pretty good. I do think the effects are processing slightly different. The delay sounds really loud to me now, which is probably just due to the way things are set up. So I'm going to turn down the mix on that a little bit. I also, maybe it's possible the cable bumped it or something. That felt like a lot of delay to me. Let's check it again. A little bit better, yeah. Sounds good. I turn the time down a little. There we go. I like my always on delays to kind of sound like a plate reverb, right? So that's kind of what I'm going for. Okay, so that's what it sounds like right now. Again, stock, right? Like we have the bright cap pulled out. Let's turn on the boost and see what it sounds like, okay? Again, the boost is at the same settings that we were at before, although the treble is turned down right now, so I'm going to turn the treble back up to where it was when I did the demo before, but otherwise it's exactly the same, okay? So here is our before sound. Again, no bright cap, no boost. This is just the raw stock amp with the NOS tubes. All right, let's turn on the boost. Right? Now, I do think it's a little dark and a little bassier, right? A little bit darker on the top end, which is what I wanted, and a little bit more bassy on the bottom end, which I didn't really want, but I knew it would happen as a side effect of this. So two things I can really do. Number one, I can turn down the bass on the boost, right? That's probably the most effective thing to do. Second thing I can do is turn down the bass on the amp, but it's already at 4, so I seriously doubt it's going to make much of a difference by turning it to 0. These old Marshalls, because of the way the amp is designed with no master volume, the EQ does very little. So I don't think it's going to result in a big change. But again, I want to see what it sounds like with the bright cap in. Okay, so I'm going to turn off our boost. All right, and again, here's our stock sound. definitely, you can tell it sounds, I think, much better now with the bright cap, with the old NOS tubes. Because what it does is it gives me all the gain I wanted out of the bright cap and like the punch, but it's definitely a slightly softer top end with slightly more lows, right? So I think my initial feeling is with the bright cap out now, it's a little bassy, but it's a good sound. With the bright cap in, it sounds better than before. Does that make sense? So before, I think I actually preferred the Chinese 12AX7s without the bright cap. But with the bright cap, I definitely prefer the NOS ones. Now let's try it with a boost, because that's the real question. The boost was making it really, really harsh before and putting some really weird frequencies into the amp. So let's see how it happens now. I'm gonna leave the treble where we had it on the bright cap pulled out just to see, but before we actually had this turned down a bit. So if you see me reach up and turn it down, that's actually what I'm gonna do, okay? So here's our sound with the bright cap in, no boost. With the boost. I think it actually sounded good both ways. It sounded good really bright, and it sounded good darker. I still hear some like weird artifacts. It could be the speakers, it could be something in the speaker cabinet rattling around, so I might have to investigate that and see what the story is. These speakers are also really old, right? It's possible. I don't think they need one. Before I bought it, I examined them to make sure they didn't need a recone or hadn't been reconed, but you know, it could be a little bit of speaker, what do they call it, cone cry, right? It could be some things like that. Like, I'm not really sure. What I want to do now is kind of like re-EQ some things. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to actually turn the treble back up to halfway and the bass up to halfway on this. My drive, by the way, is all the way down, the level's all the way up. And I want to experiment with some different boosts and stuff, but I just want to get a better feel for the amp really quick. So let me play around with the EQ real fast, and I might even manipulate some of the power station controls. Right now it's set completely neutral. There's no coloring happening from the power station at all. But I might actually want some of that coloring. So let's kind of just see what it sounds like. And again, I have bright cap in and the boost on right now. Definitely, I had to re-EQ some things. One thing I do want to try is I want to see if we jump it, what happens. Okay, so normally this is not an amp you jump, but let's see, right, kind of what happens if we jump it. Maybe we can get a cool sound. So let's check it out and see, you know, what happens. You'll hear the hiss dropped a little bit because when you jump these old amps, you lose a small amount of gain. But I'm not concerned about that because we've got the brake cap and we've got the boost. So I'm not really worried. Let's see what happens. You can hear we lost a lot of gain. See, right now it's too farty, right? So that's the problem with jumping it. When you don't have the brake cap and you jump it, it gets really, really, really farty. Even if I turn, like, let's see, I'll turn, and we have the boost on, which is actually making it better. If I turn the boost off, it's going to be even darker. One of my tips, by the way, for these old amps is if you're going to use the jump channel, I reduce the bass to 0. That's one of my things. And then I use this as a bass and like gain kind of knob, right? Like lower bass and punch. So that's what I just did there. I turned the bass all the way down to 0 and I put volume 2 at 2. So let's see what that sounds like now. Now if we put the boost on, it'll probably clear up a little bit. One sound I still want to experiment with is the brake cap in, but at a higher treble channel volume so that the brake cap matters less. When I had it down here around 4, the brake cap matters a lot, right? You can hear it. But since we're jumping the channels, I actually want the brake cap to matter maybe a little less. So let me put it up to like 6 or 7. And let's see what we get. It should matter a little less. The amp should fill out a little bit, pick up more gain and fill out a little bit. Let's see. Turn our boost off. I think the best combination so far is either straight in or jumped with the brake cap in. I think are my 2 favorite sounds. I like straight in, no brake cap with the boost, and I think I like brake cap, jumped, no boost. Sorry, that's kind of confusing. So I'm going to turn it back down to like 4, pull the brake cap, or put the brake cap in, I'm sorry, and then I think we're going to get a good sound. I'm actually going to try and dial in some depth up here instead. what's going on is the boost, I think today's boosts are so strong, right? They have like 20 dB. I think what's happening is the boost is actually muddying the circuit. I think it's kind of like overloading the front of the amp, especially when it's jumped. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just reduce the bass slightly, and I'm going to reduce the level from maximum to 3 o'clock. Okay, so let's see what that does. I'm just going to lower the level just a little bit, and then what I'm going to show you in a second is how to add drive, right? Okay, that's pretty good. It's pretty much unity gain, right? The gain is the same whether I turn the pedal on or turn it off. I don't lose any volume, I don't lose any gain. It's pretty much the same. It's maybe a little brighter with the pedal on, but that's it, right? No major difference. Again, here at pedal off. Yeah, maybe a small amount of treble, but that's it. So now what I'm going to do, since I've found unity gain, and this amp doesn't seem to be responding to overloading the circuit with a clean boost, I'm going to just add a little bit of drive with the drive knob. So let's see what happens. Definitely an improvement, right? So there you go, right? Like we kind of troubleshot this, right? Everything from the tubes to the pedals to the knobs, right? And you can see how this takes a lot of time to kind of make happen. Now, further complicating this scenario is that we did all this with this guitar, right? Which is a great guitar. This is a Gibson Custom Shop ES335. And it has the slash pickups in it. The 2.0 in the bridge, the new one, and then the regular one in the neck. And it sounds great, but if I were to pick up this guitar down here, which has Seymour Duncan 78s, the Eddie Van Halen ones, we might need to re-EQ a couple things. But you see kind of what I did there, right? The circuit was getting blown out. We had a lot of harsh frequencies from the 12AX7s. We changed those tubes out, messed around with the bright caps, messed around with jumping, messed around with the boost, and now we've got a killer sound, right? It sounds amazing. So, you know, that's kind of like what I wanted to do today is just walk you through that journey and just kind of troubleshoot it with you so you could see sort of what I was doing in troubleshooting this amp and trying to get it to sound a lot better. I don't hear any weird artifacts or anything now. Like what I did hear in the speakers before seems to be gone. I'm going to listen one more time. Maybe a small amount of still like some fuzziness in there, but that could be a lot of things. I'll try it through a different cabinet and see how it sounds, but right now I'm pretty happy with this sound. I think it sounds really good. This is Mike from Eldorado Guitars. Please like and subscribe. It really does help me out trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so I can do some live chats with you guys. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Take it easy.